And welcome everybody to the glorious episode of the Put on Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, along with Ryan Holmes, and we are podcasting off the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. A little, a little overcast, whatever. But you know how the sun always comes out. Southern California, and then it's never too gloomy out here on the West Coast. We have a special guest on our show today, Maurice Moten from Bleacher Report, from Silver and Black Today. All those great outlets. Mo, how you doing today?
Doing pretty well. New York City, not as sunny as Southern California, but nice day out here on the East Coast. So
there you go. Mo got the fresh cut, ready to go.
Yeah.
I see you out there. I see you. So I always joke about, like, when you're on, and I tell people, like, you're like almost like the Oracle in the Matrix movie that doesn't tell you what you want to hear, but what you need to hear about the Raiders. So I appreciate that, all the work you do. The Raiders are 3-1. I'm not sure. I mean, like, they're probably maybe a game over, or what some people thought they were going to be, but whatever. They are 3-1, despite a huge issue that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But two glaring things: they don't seem to get off to fast starts or even decent starts. Because if they got to a decent start in some of these games, especially against the Chargers here, they might have won that game. Who's to blame? What's the issue you feel when you're watching this team play? Why are they getting off to such sluggish starts here in 2021?
It's hard to pin the blame on one person or one group. But I think John Gruden, I give John Gruden a lot of criticism online on Twitter, if you haven't noticed, but it starts with him. And I think he owned it in his press conference on Tuesday. He said he's got to make better play calls. He did mention the offensive line, which we all know is an issue. And I think with the offensive line, you had to kind of expect this. I mean, at least I did. I've been telling people that, when you dismantle the offensive line, even though you think it's going to be better, you got younger, more athletic, that unit has to gel, and it's going to take time, especially if you have guys who are first-time starters and they're learning new positions. Two guys on that line, Andre James and Alex Leatherwood. Leatherwood was a right guard, left tackle. Andre James at UCLA played tackle. So when you insert these guys to the start lineup and you ask them to play different positions, there's going to be a rough patch. There's going to be a learning period. They have a steep learning curve, so it's going to take time. So I would pin it on John Gruden has to make better calls early in the game, knowing what his strengths and weaknesses are. And offensive line has to settle down, because I know a lot of people are beating up on the O-line, but the O-line has actually played well in good stretches in the second half. It's just the first half, as you said, it's rough, and they dig themselves in a hole. And against the Chargers on Monday, they dug a hole too deep that they couldn't come out of.
Yeah. Speaking of the offensive line, I mean, I think people are reporting that you're seeing people getting shuffled around a little bit. We even talked about it on our podcast. Maybe have Miller, Illuminor at left guard, James at center, Alex Leatherwood at right guard, and dare I say, Brandon Parker at right tackle. I never thought I would come to that thought process where he might be a better option at right tackle. Do you think that's the move that's coming? Because listen, the Raiders, watching Ruggs in person, the kid can fly. They got weapons on offense, and this is it has to be a playoff year for the Raiders, and you can't let this issue with the offensive line stop your running game and also stop you from making a potential playoff run.
It's interesting. The first thing I'll say is I'm going to put out an article on Vegas Sports today. It should come out sometime today, and it speaks to two things. One, the Raiders' offensive line doesn't match the timeline of the team. Gruden's in his fourth year. Yeah. It's important for them to make the playoffs, but you have an offensive line that's in its infancy stages of developmental mode. So you have an offensive line that's developing a team that wants to win now. So now you're stuck with, do you let those guys develop, give them time as most rookies need or first-time starters need, or do you make changes, as you just noted, to put players in the best position to succeed? And I would say this: if you think you're a playoff team, and I think the Raiders are a playoff contending team right now, they can push for a spot. Then you make a move if you're not seeing any progression from an Alex Leatherwood or Andre James at center. And then, as you said, I would move Leatherwood to right guard, where he has played at Alabama. And then, dare I say, you insert Brandon Parker right tackle. Last year at this time, you wouldn't believe people would be calling for Brandon Parker, but he may be an upgrade over Alex Leatherwood, and that's saying a lot about what Alex Leatherwood has faced. Now, in fairness to Leatherwood, again, he's learning a new position. He's gone up against Joey
Yeah.
Bosa, T.J. Watt, Justin Houston. So I mean, veterans have troubles with those guys. So of
Mm-hmm.
course, Leatherwood in his second, third, fourth game is gonna struggle. So there's been some whispers that as you said, there may be some shuffling going on. I would personally give Leatherwood about halfway through the season, midpoint around November. And if you're not seeing minimal progression, then you have to make the move and maybe shuffle him around and see what you can do at right tackle. I would even consider acquiring a right tackle via trade. I like Rick Wagner, who filled in pretty well for the Green Bay Packers at right tackle. He's still a free agent. I would pick him up if he's available or if he's still willing to play. I don't know why anyone hasn't called him yet, but I would explore that option if you can. But yes, I would shuffle the line maybe around November, week 8, 9. Let's say if there's no improvement, then you have to do something because this team is built to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I jump in. I agree with you. I think the offensive line is in an infancy stage when they moved away from some of those veterans. For me, they have to get the interior of the offensive line to be able to run the football. This team has to run the football at some point. And Illuminor, as good as he's played, he doesn't get any push in the run game. Andre James is a well below average center that just gets pushed around. And he's blocking the wrong guy half the time. So if you're going to stay with James, to me, to fix the interior three, it makes sense to try Leatherwood inside. That doesn't mean you're giving up on him as a right tackle. That doesn't mean he can't go back outside, or even if they do get on a run, go there next year. If the Raiders, to me, the biggest issue on this team, and I put it on Twitter, was the swing tackle all through training camp. They never really addressed that. And now we're seeing what's going to happen when you count on a rookie to step in and have to play day one on a team that has these kind of expectations. But if you had to choose one or the other, would you prefer to sit Andre James or move Leatherwood inside and try to put Simpson and Leatherwood around James to help the run game? Because clearly you can't roll with both of them right now at the positions they're at, especially with the defenses they're about to face.
Yeah, I would try to shift Leatherwood inside. Only because, like I said, I think Leatherwood, and a lot of people thought that Leatherwood could be a pretty good guard coming out. He's a good run blocker. Always had some questions with his pass blocking, so you knew that was going to be an issue. And I think, I don't want to say salvage the pick because it makes it seem like, as you said, they're giving up. You don't have to give up on him just because you move him inside. It's just, where is he most effective for this team right now? Because you're trying to win right now. Yeah. So you're making moves for 2021. You're not thinking about 2022. As you said, you can always push him back outside and give him more reps next off season, see where he is. But yes, I would move Leatherwood inside. And as I said, maybe I would give him another week or two. I know he's got Khalil Mack Sunday. So that could be another, and Robert Quinn and those guys, that could be rough for him. So fans may beat him up some more after Sunday. But I would give it another week or two before I move him. But you don't want to get Derek Carr mauled back there, because if Derek Carr goes down, season is cash money done. So yeah. You don't want to risk that quarterback. Yeah. We saw that in 2016. What happens when Derek Carr goes down? Nathan Peterman and Marcus Mariota, even when healthy, they don't have the same mastery of Gruden's offense as Derek Carr in his fourth year in that system.
Yeah, I agree. At some point, you have to weigh the success of this season versus the development of the rookie. But at the same time, you have to keep Carr standing upright. He can't keep getting sacked at the rate he's getting sacked. And the Brandon Parker thing, if it's a week or two and it doesn't work, you can always move Leatherwood back outside and try something else. But what they're doing now is not working. They're not picking up stunts, twists, A gap, B gap. They're coming from everywhere other than Colton Miller's side. But talking about Carr, he's already dealing with an ankle injury. But what do you think? He's played at a very high level here through 4 games. What do you think the biggest development for Carr this season has been? Is it just the mastery of the offense or the pieces around him?
Two things. I'll commend him for still improving, moving the pocket, using his feet, moving the pocket, because he has to be able to do that now, because the offensive line the protection is so bad that he has to be able to do that. And if he was a statue, and if he was where he was in 2018 with his movement, he'd be sacked 20 times by now, or hurt, one or the other. And as you say, he's getting sacked at a high rate. He's on pace, I believe, to get sacked more than 48 times. He's gone down 12 times already. So the one thing is, he's moving the pocket very well, and it's aggressiveness. And I think that comes from mastery of the offense, because I looked at that Kurt Warner breakdown before the season, and he said it. He said if Derek Carr is aggressive, that offense can take another level. And you know, I wouldn't say it took another level, but it was able to mask some of the issues up front. Him being able to stand fearlessly in the pocket and still deliver strikes downfield. Now, of course, he missed rugs or missed a play here or there, but for the most part, you like to see him go downfield. You don't want to see him curl up. And I know Joey Bosa kind of made that comment. I would disagree that Carr looks scared because I believe, as you said, he's played well during the threes, considering what the offensive line has been, what he's done. He's played very well. So just seeing him go downfield and not be afraid by the pass protection, not have his head on the swivel, still looking downfield to throw the ball. I think that's an improvement because a lot of people criticize Carr for having happy feet. He checks down too much. He doesn't go for the deep ball. You see a lot of that in the first weeks. And I think it started actually at the end of last year. He started pushing the ball downfield a lot more, and it's just continued into this season with a variety of weapons.
Yeah, I agree. I think Gruden can help him out here too. You know, a lot more play action out of heavy personnel on first down. They seem to be getting into a trend where they just want to go 3-by-1 in the gun or empty formations against some of these defenses and trust those 5 up front with no help to hold up. And that's not working. So whether it's personnel, whether it's groupings, whether it's chipping with a tight end or a running back or even a wide receiver, they've done a little bit of that to get the short game going. But the threat of play action, the Raiders just don't call a lot of it, is still effective if done properly in the right situations. And they just got to stay in the right down and distance. They can't get in 3rd and long, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12. But I do think the development of Henry Ruggs, which Dwayne already talked about, has been a big thing for this offense. He's clearly taken that role that Aguilar had, and I would argue he's been a little bit better through this point than Aguilar was last year. But what do you think of Henry Ruggs, top end by the end of the season? Is this still going to be a 3 or 4 catch guy with some deep shots, or do you think he's got a chance to get up into the 70, 75 reception range?
I think he has a chance. I think the only thing holding him back is, I don't want to say holding him back. The only thing holding him back from that, getting to that threshold, is Carr does spread the ball around. He does have a variety of weapons. I know Brian Edwards didn't do much against the Chargers, but Brian Edwards has been pretty much clutch in the 4th quarter and overtime. So he pops up and sometimes he has some big catches. And you got, of course, Darren Waller as your lead pass catcher there. You throw the ball out to Kenyon Drake, Hunter Renfrow. I'm a big fan of, as you all know. So there are a lot of pieces out there Derek Carr can focus on. So I think that's the only thing that's holding Henry Ruggs back from maybe being a 70, 75 catch guy. But I think he has a chance because you can see the improvement. He put on weight during the offseason, I believe 13 pounds. And I tweeted this. He's got some toe drag swag now. Last season, there were times where he couldn't keep his feet in bounds, and he didn't have as much body control as he does now. Now Carr can throw to him near the sideline. He'll pull the catch in and keep his feet in bounds, and I think that's a huge improvement, and that'll up his numbers. I just want to see the Raiders again continue to give him a more variety of routes and passes, and not just a deep shot. Give him some short passes because that's what he did at Alabama, the short to intermediate game. That's where he ate and yards after the catch. And once he masters that, or once him and Carr connect on those type of throws, then you'll see more catches and more yards. And I thought before the season that he could top 1,000 yards, and I still believe that he can. I don't know about the catches, but he's always going to be a big play threat. But I think he can still top the 1K mark.
No, definitely. Who thought at this point, 4 games in, we'd be talking about the struggles of the offense and the defense? We'd always wanted an average defense. Now Raider fans are like, no, now we want an average offensive line. But flipping it over to the defense, do you think they can continue to play at kind of the level they are, somewhere in the middle of the pack over a 17-game season? Or do you think teams are going to be able to start exposing them a little bit? You saw the run game by the Chargers pick up. You saw them take advantage of the seam routes. Where do you think the defense stands through 4 games, and in the long haul, what do you see out of this defense?
I like what I'm seeing so far, and I think it'll get better with time. I always said that Gus Bradley was probably one of the best additions this all season. He simplified the defensive scheme, and now players you're seeing, they're reacting a lot faster. They're swarming to the football. But as I said before, in the offseason, there were 2 things I was worried about with Bradley's defense. That there's a pattern, and you can see it when he was the defensive coordinator with the Chargers. Was he struggled with run defense? And I know a lot of people want to say, well, against the Chargers, the run defense kind of wore down because the offense didn't do much. They were on the field for too long. But going into that game, the Raiders were giving up 4.8 yards per carry already. So there were already some holes, some gaps, some holes in that run defense that they need to patch up You talked about passes in the seam routes. I was worried about turnovers with Bradley. In his history, his defenses haven't forced a lot of turnovers, haven't got a lot of takeaways. So you're relying on a lot of 3-and-outs to get off the field. Fortunately for the Raiders, I believe they're a top 10 team in terms of getting off the field on third down conversion rate. So that's working out for them. They have the pocket pressure, which is huge, and I think that's where I see growth in the future going forward. You got Max Crosby, you got Solomon Thomas, who's had a resurgence after being with the 49ers. Darius Philon making plays, Yannick Ngakoue. I mean, you would hope to see more from Cleve Farrell, but I don't think that's going to happen. But they have enough pieces on that defensive line where they get enough pressure with Max Crosby leading the charge, and I think that's where you're going to see the most growth going forward. You're going to see that defense get more pressure and get even more sacks. But I still do worry about them being so aggressive at the line of scrimmage that they let go 8-9 yard runs, and that could be a problem, especially when teams figure it out. Teams watch film, of course, they study. They're gonna say, okay, you guys can rush the pocket, you guys can get to our quarterback, but you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna run the football, and we're gonna be effective running the football, getting 4 or 5 yards per carry, and that could hurt the Rays going forward if they don't patch that up.
I agree. I think the identity of this team is changing from a power run team to we need to throw the ball around the yard and score points. And that defense is kind of built like, I'm not going to say the Colts during the Peyton Manning era or the Chiefs, but they're built to play with a lead and rush the passer. They're not built to stop the run when you're behind 14-0, which they've done 3 times. So, I think the identity of this team is slightly changing away from what Gruden wanted it to be, and we'll see if he embraces that over the next 4 games as we approach the midway point of the season. But he's going to have to adjust his coaching style and play calling to kind of what's going on the field. I think that's the biggest thing to watch over the next couple of weeks. But and then just the depth on this roster, we're seeing it. It's, the Raiders tried to build depth as best they could, but we got defensive backs going down every week. They've already lost some linebackers. Thankfully, the defensive line has stayed healthy. The offensive line's a mess. The running back room's a mess. So it's a 3-game stretch here that Dwayne and I talked about last night. I mean, you have 2 out of the next 3 at home. You're facing the Bears, which should be a win. You have a rookie quarterback. You have at Denver, which is going to be a pretty tough game. And then you have the Eagles coming to your house before the bye. So realistically, where do you think the Raiders stand when we look back 3 weeks from now? Well, what do you think they're going to be going into the bye?
Man, I want to say 6-1. I do, because I think all those games are winnable games that you just talked about. They should be able now. I think the toughest one, I know people called Denver Broncos frauds because of who they played in the first weeks when they were 3-0 before they lost to the Ravens, but they still have a formidable defense. And if Teddy Bridgewater is back there, not making mistakes, not turning the ball over, that could be a tough matchup. And in recent history, Carr and Gruden have struggled with Denver. So I think that if they trip up, and let's say they instead of 6-1, they're 5-2, that will be the game that I think they could trip up. But again, they should be favored in each of these games, considering what their offense is right now and their defense playing situationally well. You mentioned their defense is kind of maybe similar maybe to the Colts and the Chiefs, where situationally they can play well if they can just rush the passer and stop get off the field in 3-and-outs, they'll be fine. But as you said, if you play a running team, and I believe Denver, Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, their 2nd-round rookie, they can run the ball. You got Jalen Hurts, who's a dynamic quarterback, dual threat. So Justin Fields, even though he's a rookie, dual threat, he can use his legs. So we'll see what they do. He has improved, Justin Fields. They just named him the starter, and I think part of that is they saw a little bit of progression. So with the Raiders, it's just don't, as we started off in this podcast, you can't start off slow. You can't put yourself in a 14-0 hole and just expect their car to put on a cape and save you. Not with that offensive line. It's just not going to happen. So Gruden has to do something with his play calling to understand, as you just said, adjust to what his team's strengths are. You're not a physical football team as you once were anymore with the veteran offensive line and a strong run game. Josh Jacobs is banged up. Peyton Barber is now out, I believe, a mild turf toe issue. They don't want to give the ball to Kenyon Drake and give it to him 20 times to run the ball. They'd rather pass it to him on the short passing game. What I thought was interesting was Brendan Staley, after that Raiders game, he said the run game, even if it's not effective, there's one thing that the run game does for a football team, and it forces the opposing team to play blocks and play physical. You have to tackle. And the Raiders right now, they're more of a I don't want to say finesse, but they're more effective at the pass. And now opponents don't have to I don't want to say don't have to worry about tackles, but now it's like, okay, this is a passing team, less physical. Guys up front can pin their ears back and go after Carr. And that could be an issue when you're going against dynamic quarterbacks or running backs who are capable of ripping off 4 or 5 yards per carry. So they're gonna have to patch that up. But if they can, I can see them going 6-1 in this stretch, and they'll be looking good. And I know Raiders fans are, some of them are, the sky is falling because of the way the offensive line looks, and losing to a Chargers division rival. I actually think they'll be fine midway through the season.
Yeah, I think we settled on 6-1. I was more in the 5-2 bucket, but my concern was Denver. But then when you look at it, you don't want them to be 0-2 in the division and haven't played Kansas City yet. So in the long haul, they need to win that Broncos game. But then you have a bye, and then you have the Giants. So I'd be okay at 6-2. It's just the one game that's up in the air is the one I don't want to be up in the air. We'll see. But no, I agree with you. They need to. Gruden doesn't call play action at a high rate. If they can't pass protect, they need to give those linemen some help, and that should slow it down. We actually saw the Raiders call a screen, which I don't remember the last time John Gruden called a running back screen. It didn't work, but they tried.
Yeah, they tried.
But no, I think you're exactly right. 6-1. If you would have told me before the season the Raiders have a chance to get to 6-1, I know we're looking 3 games in the crystal ball in the future, but I wouldn't have believed you. But realistically, 5-2, I think would be okay with that. And I would have taken that too at the beginning of the season. You said, hey, Ryan, they're going to be 5-2 at the bye. I'd say, okay, where do I sign up?
Yeah.
Right. But really quick, though, I want to just get your thoughts on something, because I wrote this in my article about helping Alex Leatherwood if you're going to keep him at right tackle. I don't know if you remember in 2016, the Raiders had Denver Kirkland, right?
Mm-hmm.
330 plus pounds.
6 linemen.
Right. They use max protect, and they haven't had him as a 6th lineman. I believe I looked it up on Pro Football Focus. He played 127 inline tight end. And I think the Raiders need to experiment with that look. If you're going to use maybe a Foster Moreau, I know Raiders fans want to see him more pass catching, but if you got it, because he was known for blocking at LSU. And if you got to use him as an extra lineman, I know Derek Carrier is banged up with a pec injury, but if you got to use one extra offensive lineman, I think that would be the way to go if you're going to keep Alex Leatherwood, because he obviously needs help. I don't want to see Alex Leatherwood on an island with a premier edge rusher. He needs help, and it can't just be a running back in the backfield. I think it has to be an extra offensive lineman.
And I think also this week, I think this week especially, you're not going to see Gruden's going to do everything in his power this week, because he does not want Mac to destroy this game. It's still salt in the wound from that trade. And you saw the emotion when they beat him in London. He in no way wants to see Khalil Mack in this backfield every play.
No, I think, that was a Bill Musgrave move, by the way, to go to the 6th lineman. To use Parker as the 6th lineman. I don't know. He's not a pass threat, but if the Raiders want to run the football, John Gruden, he wants to come out and run it in 22, 23, 13 personnel, big dudes. Why not try a 6th lineman? They're not moving any movement on the line right now with 5. They have Nick Bowers. He's sitting there on the 53-man blocking tight end, 260 pounds from Penn State. Moreau hasn't been blocking very well this year. Maybe you dress a 4th tight end and try him. But no, they need to do something. It can't be Darren Waller chip blocking, because you can't take him out of the pass progression, because then you lose half your offense if he's just running, 5 or 10 yard routes after he's chipping. Jalen Richard maybe is a chipper back this week, but they have to do something. It can't be empty set. We're just going to have no protection, 5 linemen down, and we're going to try to pick up 4 or 5, because they're losing, like I said, A gap, B gap, blitzes, linebackers coming free, stunts. They're just not picking any of it up.
Right.
Not looking good. So as far as surprises this year, a surprise this year for the Raiders and a disappointment this year through 4 games. And then the keys to stopping a rookie quarterback like Justin Fields as the Bears invade Allegiant this weekend.
A surprise. I'll say Solomon Thomas. Because I didn't have Solomon Thomas making the 53. He was coming off a significant injury, so I was worried, okay, Darius Philon is a Gus Bradley guy. So maybe Solomon Thomas is the odd man out. Turns out he's making contributions, and that entire defensive line, I think, is making contributions. But just to see him bounce back off an injury was surprising. It was a pleasant surprise for me. Disappointment, I have to go with Damon Arnett. I mean,
that way.
Yeah, I understand that he basically lost his job once Casey Hayward got there. But every time a cornerback goes down, Trayvon Mullen or Casey Hayward goes down, and I automatically know Damon Arnett's on the field because that's where the quarterback is throwing. And you saw that immediately in the Pittsburgh Steelers game. I believe it was when I believe Casey Hayward had issues with cramps or whatever with his leg. And every time Damon Arnett got on the field, Ben Roethlisberger, who's washed right now, went right at Damon Arnett. Chase Claypool, Damon Arnett. That was his matchup. And every time, it just seems like every time Damon Arnett is on the field, that's where the ball is going. It's probably going to be for a big completion. And that's rough looking at him as a first round pick from just last year because you want to see some growth. And I know the Raiders are banged up there. I believe they're still waiting word on Trayvon Mullen's foot injury. If Trayvon Mullen cannot play, I'm looking at Amik Robinson, even though he's 5'8".
Yeah.
He did play outside at Louisiana Tech. I know it's different on the NFL level, but Darius Williams was able to pull it off with the Rams last year under Brandon Staley. I think if you have a good defensive coordinator and a guy with talent, you don't overlook that for size because he is not the prototypical size of a boundary cornerback. I think you have to go with Meek over Damon Arnett. I know Damon Arnett is also banged up with a groin, but if I'm picking between Arnett and Amik, I'm going with Amik to replace Trayvon Mullen if they need to do so.
And as far as the slowing down Justin Fields here, I mean, not that he's tearing up the league right now, but as a rookie quarterback, you want to take advantage of his inexperience. What do you feel like the Raiders have to do to kind of put him in a bad spot here on Sunday?
I think it's what most defensive coordinators try to do: show him different looks, disguise looks, show him cover 2 and maybe pull back and cover 3. Just kind of make him think, make him process the game from the pocket. Don't let him get outside. He does have an accurate deep ball. You saw it with Darnell Mooney last week. I believe Mooney had 125 yards with Justin Fields back there. So you have to defend the deep ball. You have to respect his arm. But again, I would just disguise. I know Gus Bradley is not a blitz guy. Maybe you toss in the blitz here and there, though, because when he has blitz, it has worked for the most part. So maybe you confuse him a little bit with the blitz, some disguised looks, and again, make him process the field, because I think that's what rookie quarterbacks have to develop most is they have to process it from the pocket, from the pre-snap to the post-snap. And I think you have to make him think. And then you look at maybe he makes a mistake, an errant throw with the Raiders pressure in the pocket. He'll throw a pick here and there, and you can take advantage of that.
Yeah, the picks have been far too far in between for the Raiders here. Maurice Moten, thank you for joining us here on the Put On Raiders podcast. We really appreciate your time. I know you're busy. Tell Scott when you see him, I'm sorry about his Padres. I know he's, that happens sometimes, it's a tough luck with that. And we'll see. I know you do fantasy football too, as well. So you do a lot of different things. So we appreciate your time here on the podcast.
I appreciate you guys. I actually looked at my history and I was like, you guys have contacted me from way back. And I felt bad because I didn't respond to those messages, but I try to get back to people and try to respond, because I understand, like, coming up with guests and content, it's a huge thing. And I hate when people blow Scott off for our request for a podcast show. Yeah. So I try to get back when I can. So I appreciate you guys having me on and reaching out again and having me today.
Yeah, no problem. Take care, brother.
All right, you too.